Got my light on the side, and that's not as good as in the front. Let me get the light here. Okay, so sorry. Welcome to the Flipping and Wholesaling Houses in New York show. I am Michael Pinter, where I teach you how to start flipping or wholesaling houses, or if you're already doing it, how to grow your business. So I got a question. Can I make a video on what sellers can say about their mortgage and whether you can wholesale the house or not because of the mortgage on the home? Okay, so me or my team always ask about the existing mortgage, and sometimes it's a touchy topic because sometimes people don't want to disclose, sometimes people don't disclose. So what I say to sellers, or my team says to sellers, is I'm guessing you own the property free and clear with no mortgage, right? And usually the answer is no, I have a mortgage. And then if they say they have a loan on it, I will say, or my team will say to them, do you know about how much you owe? Sometimes they'll come back and say, why do you need to know that? And then they're trained to say, because, well, if we buy the property, we have to pay the mortgage off. Usually that explains it. Now, now why is that important, and what are the consequences? So if someone owes X, right, they owe $300,000 in a house, and you, after doing some quick math, say you can't pay more than $200 on the house, even though the house may be worth more than $300, remember, we have to buy properties at a discount to make a profit, right? There's no way around that, right? And I am straight up with everyone in my team. I tell them to push back as much as possible. Somebody wants top dollar, we're going to ask them if they have somebody to list it with. Somebody has some kind of issue where they need to take a discount, then we can talk further. So how much they owe is really going to affect A, whether we can buy the property at that price, at a discounted price, and B, sometimes they owe more than it's worth, right? So if somebody owes more than the property is worth, or even more than you're willing to pay as a buyer, then there is something called a short sale, right? A short sale is when a lender agrees to take a reduced payoff. 99 out of 100 times, they're only going to allow that if the property is sold. So once in a while, I've been lucky enough to get a short payoff, but very, very rare. So short payoff really is no restrictions. I had that recently. I had a property. They didn't care. They just wanted a certain amount by a certain date, and there were no restrictions on it. So I actually bought the property. I let the people stay in it, and then I sold it back to them. There were no restrictions on that. Most of the time, you're not allowed to do that. Most of the time in a short sale, the lender is going to require the property to change hands on an arm's length transaction, which means they're not selling it to their cousin kind of thing. They can't be related. Shouldn't have the same last name, and the seller wants to say that you're willing to sell this property and get out of it, and then we're willing to take less than we're owed. But those are complicated, right? Because I'll tell you just the logistics of a short sale. The logistics of a short sale, I do not negotiate short sales, right? To me, it is a skill that not only do I not want to have, that it takes a lot of banging your head against the wall, right? Very often you're dealing with people that work for the servicers or the lenders. Just to explain what servicer is. Servicer is the one who actually takes the payments, does the payments. Not always the same as a lender. So Chase Manhattan Bank may make a loan, but they may have another servicer that services it, right? Mr. C. There's all these weird companies. Mr. Cooper. I don't know. All these companies that service. And they actually handle the payments. So you have to deal with the servicer. And the servicer then, if they can agree to something, has to get approval from the lender. So there's a lot of going around. And you're dealing with people at these places very often who are not exactly compensated to move things through the system, which is stupid, right? Or the system is set up against you. So what happens a lot in these short sale situations is that, well, I'll tell you what happens, but first let me tell you how it works. Step one is for the seller/borrower, right? The seller, hopefully to us, borrower to the servicer, to sign an authorization letter that allows somebody to speak to the servicer on their behalf and say, hey, we want this property to be sold for $300, even though $500 is owed on it, and we're going to show you a lot of paperwork. And a lot of paperwork is needed. Paperwork from the seller, paperwork from us. They want a contract from us. They want proof of funds from us. They want to know that we're a real buyer. And sometimes that paperwork is only good for a certain amount of time, right? The borrower may need to show that they're in some kind of hardship, and that letter may only be good for 30 days. And it may take them more than 30 days to look at it. So then we go through it over and over again. These documents expired. We submit the documents, they call us back 60 days later and say it expired. That can happen. So sometimes a short sale can be a very, very lengthy and frustrating process. I don't want to deal with it. I have a great short sale negotiator who I use. Her name is Karina Prudencio. If anybody needs her information, feel free to reach out. She's amazing, and I would recommend her to anyone. But there's a process, right? And sometimes it's quick, but usually it takes months and months, and sometimes it can take many, many months. And sometimes the lender will just change their mind in the middle. They have all the power, which is one of the reasons why I hate doing short sales, because if I'm talking to a seller and the seller agrees to sell me a property for X dollars, hopefully they're the only decision maker. I don't want to have other decision makers come in and kill the deal. Sometimes they do, and sometimes I ask, and sometimes I foolishly don't ask, are you the only decision maker? The truth is, the question that I really should ask every time is there anybody involved here that even would just be a little bit upset if this happened and you didn't tell them? That's really what I should ask. And I haven't really got that into my repertoire of sales yet, but I should. Which really means, is there anybody that's going to be upset? Because I've had deals die. You know, I had an older couple that wanted to sell a property, and the kids got involved and went bananas, said, no, you tell me I was a shyster, I was ripping them off. Just crazy things that went on, completely unwarranted and unnecessary. I don't know why they did that. It was really me buying the property from their parents would have gotten them exactly what they wanted. I even found them someplace else to go, but they thought that I was trying to scam them. I don't know. So you need to ask those questions, but you always want to ask about the mortgage, always. Now sometimes people just won't give it to you. I'm not prepared to tell it to you. I'm not, sometimes that happens, and I'd say you should still move on. I had a situation recently where the guy told me he owed X and he really owed 2X. And he told me, well, that's the principal balance. I'm like, yeah, if you haven't made payments in a few years, then it's going to be a lot more. So it ended up being a situation where he agreed to my offer, and then we ended up having to short sell it. That happens sometimes. But you should always ask about the mortgage. Now, what do we say? What sellers can say about the mortgage. So what they can say, I don't want to tell you, and they can say, I owe X. And sometimes it's the truth, and sometimes it's not. And you're not going to know that sometimes until you get to close it, or you get closer to closing and a title is ordered. And that's happened, right? Now, on PropStream, you can usually see what the approximate balance is, or you can see if it's going into pre-foreclosure or foreclosure. So sometimes that's a little nugget of information. I tell people to look up either on PropStream or the Nassau County Clerk. You see, Suffolk is much harder to get this information. It's easier on Acris. Nassau County is easy, where you can look up and see if there's a list pendants filed, which is almost always due to a foreclosure, and when was it filed, right? So, for example, someone takes a mortgage for $400,000 10 years ago. If there's a list pendants filed within a year, they probably didn't make any payments on it significantly. 10 years now, it's probably 800, more than doubled. But if someone only has a list pendants filed a year ago, then we can sort of project how much the balance should be. Hopefully, maybe they got to modify. We don't know exactly. But list pendances that are old have a lot of interest accruing and other things accruing on them. So that's the basic gist of the work you would do. So in Nassau, I go to mynassauproperty.com or lrv.nassaucountynY.gov, I think. So it takes you to the same place. And then I look up the section, block, and lot. Then I go to U.S. land records, and I look up with that section, block, and lot, and see everything that's recorded over the, I think everything since 1980 is in there. On Acris, which is the New York's website, you can do the same thing. Suffolk is really a bitch to find that information. You need a 19-digit Suffolk County tax number, the SCTN, which you have to get from each of the townships, and then you go to Suffolk County Clerk's website, and you can't actually see the documents unless you pay for it. And it's really mind-numbing in Suffolk County. Much harder, really backwards. Not a good system at all. That information should be available for anyone to see, any recorded documents. In Suffolk County, you can see what the document is, like you see mortgage, but I want to see the mortgage. How much was it for? Who was it with? And in Suffolk, you can't. It's one of the worst counties for public data that I think exists. Just a terrible system. Nassau is better, and this 5 boroughs are better. So that's basically the gist of it. I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in all the ways that I can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com. This lighting is not great. What's going on here? That's worse. Okay. If you're interested in finding out more about one-on-one coaching I offer, go to coaching.howtoflipnewyork.com. What else? If you are interested in a study-at-home program I have that teaches where I teach how to do what I do, go to howtoflipnewyorkcourse.com. I'm changing that URL soon. And if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're watching on any media channel, please click the thumbs up. That really helps the algorithm. More people like it, the more people see it. I don't know how the social media algorithms work. But please keep the comments coming too. I try to get back to comments within a day or two. I post 5 times a week. I don't always know what to say, so I beg you, please give me questions. If it's a simple answer, I'll just reply with an answer. If it's something I've covered in depth recently, I'll send you links to videos on it. And if it's something new or something I've never covered, that's the same thing. Something new, I will do a new video on it. So thank you very, very much for watching.